Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Talking Reds. My name is Mo Stewart, alongside me Gareth Roberts. Now those of you who watched the final word yesterday will realise we switched places, showing our versatility.
We haven't been home.
Speak for yourself.
Just changed top.
I mean, I don't have an array of tops. I don't have a wardrobe here of all my gear like some. I've got them in the house like normal people.
I've got a dressing room and a makeup artist. I haven't.
No, Robert's not quite big time enough for that yet. We'll have to wait and see.
I haven't even got a bed for my new flat.
We're going to be hearing about Robert's new flat quite a lot throughout the show. But the season is over. As you all well know, Liverpool did what they had to do. And now the season's over, it's officially time to start talking about the ins and the outs. And we are going to be doing that. We're going to be concentrating on one of each in this show. We're also going to do a little bit on those two games that still are happening in the season that we're not really that asked about, honest. But first of all, May 25th, you know what that means. Happy Istanbul Day to all of you.
And Rome, the first one.
Yes, indeed, and Rome, the first one. Now, I wasn't around for that one. I believe you were there for...
Not Rome, the first one. Fucking hell, lad. I mean, I'm old, but I'm not that old. I do remember it. I do remember 84. But now, Istanbul, I was there.
Yes.
And I did, as usual, on this day, watch Sean Connery do, what's it called? The Beatles song? In My Life.
In My Life.
In My Life, set to pictures of Istanbul. And as usual, it raised a tear because, yeah, it was an amazing trip, an amazing day and an amazing match. And even though it's now, 16 years ago, it still makes the goosebumps appear because, yeah, the whole thing was absolutely madness. But I've written about it loads, I've talked about it loads, we've done loads on it on the Anfield Wrap loads. But equally, I don't get tired of talking about it because it's so mad. It's just so mad that, you know, even just watching that little thing today, and it was like, you know, the penalty shootouts, the cramp, you know, the jerseys save, which you still don't really know how that happened. You know, Alonso nearly getting his head ripped off.
That's probably my personal favourite point. That and Smeets' goal, because that was the goal that really felt like it changed everything.
There's a boss. I love a picture. Like there's so many iconic pictures around that European Cup win as well. But there is one of Vladdy somewhere with a massive cigar.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, you know, he always seemed like a quiet fella, and he was he was good, but he was a bit too timid on the pitch for my liking at times. And then I like the fact that because he played such a big part in that game. It was his last game for Liverpool as well, wasn't it?
It was.
And there he was, obviously, on the aisle, celebrating the European Cup, this massive cigar, big smile on his face, and it was like, yes. Vladdy, lad.
And that's it. Like, that game gave him his moment, and it gave everyone who was involved legendary status, and they will keep it forever and ever. So whatever you're doing today, raise a smile to the heroes of 2005 and 1984, as Robert rightly remembered. Now, this day is a very special day for someone else, because I believe it's Ibrahima Konate's birthday today.
Happy birthday, lad.
And also...
Any beds?
For goodness sake. He's got more important things to worry about.
I mean, he'll be sorting out. He'll be getting a dead boss apartment in Liverpool. They'll be sorting that out right now. He'll probably walk in and it'll already be furnished, and he'll be like, I don't want that bed. I'll have it. Call it 50 quid, lad, yeah?
I mean, you don't think he's joking. He's really not joking. But, I mean, with the reason we're talking about him, there's been lots of rumours that we are getting closer to actually getting him over the line. Fabrizio Romano, I mean, the world of ITKs is a bit of a wild west in general, but he seems to be someone who gets it right more than most. He seems to be saying we're edging closer, although Paul Gorse today, literally just before we started the show, put out something saying that they don't think it will happen during the Under-21 Euros, which actually start on Monday. So
What's Indy said?
Indy said it's the done deal, I believe, a couple of days ago, but we'll have to wait and see. But anyway.
If KFC's finest says it's happening, it's happening.
It looks like it is happening. I mean, he didn't play in either of our games against Leipzig in the Champions League, which is now looking even more suspicious, if you ask me, because he was fit and on the bench for both of them and did not get on. But have you seen a lot of him? And if so, what are your initial thoughts of him?
Not a lot. So I haven't been sitting watching loads of Leipzig matches or anything like that. I've done the the YouTube reel, which I imagine our scouts have done a little bit more than that. I'd hope so. Anyway, but it is his birthday today, 22 today, isn't he? I think when you watch him, from what you can see on YouTube, etc., he looks obviously stylistically a better fit to Liverpool than, you know, with every respect, I think you've got to always say that, but a better suit than the lads we've seen playing centre-half this season. You know, he brings the ball out, doesn't he? His confidence, all of those things. Equally though, I think it's interesting that they're going for someone who's only 22, because that says to me there's a confidence then that Van Dijk, that Matip, that Gomez are going to return to the levels that we're used to seeing them at. Because I think if there was any concern medically behind the scenes, well, one, they wouldn't shout about it, but two, I think they might sign someone more experienced, someone off the shelf. Whereas with Konate, you know, he'll get a game, I'm sure he will, but I wouldn't expect to be seeing him in the first team from the off.
Well, this is it. It's the interesting point, isn't it? Because we've got those three great defenders who are coming back from injury. We don't know what stage they're going to be at pre-season or as the time to get to the start of the season. So we don't necessarily know what the makeup of our centre-half lineup is going to be, because obviously there's still the deal with Kabak. We're still up in the air. We've obviously got, I think it's probably fair to say Reece Williams is probably going to go on a loan to play somewhere, play a full season somewhere, try and get some minutes higher up the pyramid than Kidderminster Harriers, and maybe lower down the pyramid than Liverpool, so he can actually start to get his feet under him and build a career. Nat Phillips, he is still the question mark within all of this though. But what I want to ask you, Robbo, I think we can hopefully safely say that we're putting Fabinho back in midfield and locking him there.
Please.
Are you wanting to go into the season with 5 recognised centre-halves? And if so, if we assuming Konate's coming in, and I think we can probably assume Van Dijk and Gomez, I think there's probably still a slight question mark over Matip because he's older and his injury record. But then you've got Kabak and you've got Phillips. Of those three, Matip, Kabak, Phillips, how many of those three are you expecting to be in the squad at the start of next season?
I mean, fingers crossed we see Matip, because I really like Matip, and when he's fit and firing and at his best, I think he's right up there among the best in the league in this position. Really like Matip. So fingers crossed for Matip. I think it's worth remembering that for all the, you know, the disparaging comments about what he might be made of and how resilient he might be, he was actually playing through injury this season. And then they reached a point where they could squeeze no more from him. So he could have stopped and got himself fit and got sorted out earlier.
And would have if either Van Dijk and Gomez had been fit.
Exactly. So they played him through injury. So, you know, a bit of respect around them on that, I think. But I've heard little whispers. I'm very much not in the know.
I was going to say, here we go.
I'm very much not in the know. But I have heard little whispers, that we won't be signing Kabak, that we won't take up the option. I don't think that's the most surprising thing in the world, just because, again, age profile, I think he's been a bit of a mixed bag while he's been with us. You know, there's been good and bad. It feels harsh. It feels harsh that we negotiated for him. We've got the fee there that we can pay to complete a move for him. He seems happy. All of those things. And he's had his little baptism of fire. All of those things you think, well, if they saw him as a development project, then, you know, get him in. But I wonder as well whether there's a bit of a diddle going on with getting Konate in, because Leipzig are meant to be interested in him as well. And so does it then become part of the negotiation? Okay, we'll pull out of buying Kabak, you can have Kabak, we'll have Konate, happy days. So I think there might be a bit of that
especially
going on.
when it comes to the idea of potentially not having to pay the full whack release clause in one go, if we can do this deal for Leipzig. And we do generally have a good relationship with the executives there. I can see it happening. You're right, it does kind of feel harsh for Kabak, especially when you think he hasn't had a chance to play with his hero Virgil. But I do think that we're in a situation where Liverpool have to be hard-nosed at this particular point. They have to be, look, like you say, he may not necessarily be the worst of the defenders, but in terms of what we're looking for, I can see a room for him. I can see a room for him. It's harder to make the case for Kabak. When we first signed him, I was a little bit wary, mainly because I was kind of keeping my eye on Konate. I kind of wanted us to go for him all along. So the idea that we're kind of swapping one for the other makes sense to me. I still think that then we might find, depending upon the recovery of the others, we might be in a situation with Nat Phillips where there are teams who want him, and we might be thinking, well, we could use the extra money we get out of him to buy other players. But then we might also be thinking, well, do we want to keep him until we know these lot are back to fitness? And in that case, will his window close?
Yeah, there is that, isn't there? I think whatever happens, we can't take risks about it in terms of numbers now. So I totally get the argument when people say you could not plan, surely you could not plan for 3 senior centre-halves being out basically all season. And no, you couldn't. But equally, when that's happened to you, you know, you can't go, okay, well, let's make sure we end up in that situation again. Equally, you know, you look at the sort of points per game when Fabinho's in midfield and when he's not, that there's a huge drop-off. He needs to stay there. He isn't a plan for centre-half. He isn't even a break glass for centre-half anymore. So, you know, Nat Phillips would be an all right break glass for centre-half. I'd be all right with him sort of being back down the pecking order where he probably should be, if we're all being honest. And if he wants to stay at Liverpool and he's happy with that situation, then fine. And he might be. Yeah. He might be. He's always fit. You know, he's pretty resilient and all that kind of stuff. So you've got that. He's got that in his locker. Stylistically, though, you can still see that he doesn't suit how Liverpool would ideally want to play. So, but equally from his perspective, and from Liverpool's perspective, his stock's never been higher in his 24 years on the planet. So they may well, someone might come in, offer good money, offer him good money, offer him first team football, and that would seem maybe to make sense for everyone.
It would, and that's the thing, sometimes it feels like you're being harsh when you say it's the perfect time to sell someone, but if you think about that person's career, they could be further down the line into a situation where, looking back on it, they'll say this is the perfect time for me to leave Liverpool. I think of someone like Div, and he's probably regretting not leaving last season. And he's got to a point now where his options are considerably less, his value is considerably less, and now it's becoming more of a millstone. And for someone who has had so many great moments in the red shirt, you never want to think of someone being like, you know, outstaying the welcome. Kara talks about this all the time. He never wants to think about outstaying his welcome. He compares the end of his career to the end of Michael Owen's career, for example, and he kind of was a substitute at Stoke, whereas Kara was cheered off by a full Anfield.
At the bar.
Yeah. Still waking up every morning thinking about that.
Wish it had gone in.
I mean, just imagine how unbearable it'd be if I had gone in there.
Yeah, but imagine Anfield that day if it had gone in.
Yeah,
I think we all would have been on the pitch.
Absolute right.
Where did that come from as well? Like, I mean, why didn't he try that before?
I mean, well, he scored in his first game. Like, maybe he was trying to be selfless and saying, you know what, now's my time, fuck it.
QPR, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Some effort, though.
But anyway, talking of people leaving the club and picking the right time, it feels like a decent way to segue into talking about Gini, who he is officially leaving Liverpool. I mean, he's not actually we've not had a club statement, but everyone's pretty much said it without actually saying it. It's a sad time. I think we all agree the fact that we cherish the time that he had, those 5 years. And I feel like, to a certain extent, he's just a victim of circumstance, because if you think about all of the other players that have come in the club era, he was the only one who never signed an extension at any point.
Yeah.
And it was almost like he was never high enough in the priority lists to get that new deal. And so now when we come to the end of it and he's asking for more money and he's feeling like, okay, I've had these 5 years where I felt like I've been underappreciated here, I want to go for this number and I feel like my body of work deserves it.
Yeah.
And the club have been like, well, we see where you're coming from, but yeah. And we all know there's the whole idea of the calendar and the fact that he's getting on in years, the fact that the club didn't probably want to give him the length of contract he was looking for.
Yeah.
And yeah, sometimes, like a good relationship, it looks really great and sometimes it feels really great, but sometimes it just has to end at the time it does.
I just think, like, you know, probably what everyone is saying about it, even the different views on it, like, there's a bit of truth in all of it. So you know, like, it's easy to just say you should have just given him another contract. And yeah, there's a valid argument to be made because he played virtually every minute in the league for Liverpool. You know, Jurgen always turned to him in the big moments. All of those things, obviously trusted him. He was obviously well liked. We like him. Yeah. All of those things are correct. And if you'd have seen him turning out for Liverpool at the start of next season, he would have been absolutely fine. We would have carried on as is. He probably would have clocked up 30 odd games in the league once more. You know, he's fit, he's resilient, all of those things. But equally though, Liverpool have got to be looking at the bigger picture of the average age of the squad. There's a lot of sort of 28, 29, 30s now, Gini being one of them. They've got to start to lower that. They've got to get people in to start to work towards lowering it. And I just think if he was asking for sort of parity with the top earners, if he was asking for 180, 190, 200, and then he was asking for 5 years, then you can start to see why Liverpool might be like, we can't do that, Genie, do you know what I mean? And then equally, I think the reason it's got to where it's got and they haven't sort of met in the middle is it's still being kept down about where he's going to go. Bayern and Barca seems to be the commonly accepted two clubs. But one of them will give him that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've got, all the sort of his future, his family, the fact that you're only a footballer once, the fact that you only live once. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's as similar to what we just said about Nat, in that, I think he would have loved to stay at Liverpool. You could see he was emotional at the end, but equally, in 10 years, 20 years time, if he sits down and looks at it and goes, okay, well, I did get that 5 years I want, and I did get it at that level I want, and that's given me and my family even more security.
Yeah, and I think that if you think about it from all points of view, we as people, and probably even some people within the club, are happy that he's going to get his money somewhere. I think it sounds like his Angels have played a bit of a blinder here by bringing Bayern into the talks in order to get that money from Barcelona. If you listen to reports that, again, were happening just before we started recording, it looks like Barcelona have once again moved ahead in the queue. What will happen once they sack Koeman in December is anybody's guess. Yeah. Maybe he'll be looking to come home.
It is that, isn't it? I mean, the other thing on his wage as well, I would say, is that, say he was looking for those figures that I just talked about. If you're getting in the, like Konate, for instance, I know it's not the same position, but he'll be getting nowhere near that wage-wise. You would imagine half, if even that. So in terms of a pot that you've got to pay wages out of, you can get 2 or maybe 3 players for the salary that Genie was asking for. Yeah. So Liverpool have got to think about that. I know we don't like that, and I know that everyone will say, "Oh, FFG," but it's the reality of running a footy club, isn't it?
And money doesn't exist in a vacuum. And I think the other thing we have to remember is that Liverpool are trying to set the benchmark here for a lot of these similar conversations they're going to have with a lot of other members of the squad over the next 2 to 3 years. And I look at City.
Mo knocking at the door. I'm well back at the gym. Yeah, exactly. See the goals I've scored, lad. And you're putting him on the same money as me.
Well, this is it. Mo doesn't have to say anything. He can just go in there, set up a little projector, just press play, just have his goals going on a loop and just walk. Like, I'll be back in an hour.
Holding his golden boots and not just going.
Any chance? But the reality is that there are lots of people who are going to have this conversation. And I look at City and I think about how they reacted initially to losing company and it threw them off. But I think about how they've done it since then. How they've basically let go one big aging star a year. You've had David Silva, they've got Aguero. And it's allowed everybody else to kind of evolve the team around them without having to lose 3 or 4 of them in one go and it being a whole new revolution. Yeah. And you've got a lot of players.
And those same conversations are happening, aren't they? I heard it on Sky yesterday. Oh, they could have kept Aguero for 1 more year. He's still capable of scoring goals. At some point, you've got to draw the line, haven't you? You can't just keep doing it. What did Aguero get? 6? I think in the league this season, something like that.
Including 2 on the last day.
Yeah, against Everton. Rolled out the red carpet. But you know what I mean? You've got to draw the line. You've got to, it goes back, doesn't it, to, it was Paisley, wasn't it, about, not letting players get old on our books and all that kind of stuff. So. You've got to draw the line.
And now, speaking of obviously giving other people, younger players, the money, there was an interesting comment I saw from Danny Murphy, I think it was recorded in the Mirror, who said that he believes that Curtis Jones is going to be the one to take a lot of Genie's minutes. Now, they are a slightly different profile player, but Jones has definitely, his influence on the squad has increased massively over the last year or so. I do believe the Klopp trusts him to be able to play him in big games. Do you think that this means that we're not going to be expecting another big money midfielder coming in? Or again, are you thinking squad depth going to be of paramount importance? We've still got 2 midfielders who we can't really rely on injury-wise. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, I think he's still got to get one in because you can't rely on those 2. You simply can't. They'd be useful to Liverpool if they were fit more often, and that's a fact. On Jones, I really, really like him. I think he's going to be a top player. What I would say is, I would still worry slightly just about his maturity. So, one of the things that you saw with Wijnaldum week in, week out was him playing with maturity. He just wasn't off. He never ever flapped. He always got out of situations. He'd use his arse. He'd win a free kick. He'd hardly ever lose the ball. He'd show for the ball all the time. All of those things. And you very rarely were watching him and going, he looks dead frustrated there.
No.
Whereas I think you watch Jones, he's got all the ability. He's going to be a top player. But I think you do see moments where it's getting to him, where it mentally he's just like, he's a young lad.
Yeah, and also he feels that pressure, I think, of not only coming into the team as a young lad, but also being a Scouser as well. Yeah. And obviously he's got Trent behind him who can help him out on that score. But I also feel like in certain ways the fact that he's a central midfielder and he's a Scouser means that there are certain other comparisons to a certain former player.
Didn't stop him taking 17 though, did he?
No, he didn't. and that's the thing, he wants to project the fact that he's willing to take on his challenge, meet it head on. But sometimes, as you say, he needs to mature ahead to say, look, today's not a day to fight.
I'll take Mogetson in midfield.
Yeah. Now, speaking of our youth players, we should shout out the youth team who unfortunately weren't able to win the FA Youth Cup last night. They got beaten 2-1 against Aston Villa. A very good Aston Villa team, to be fair. But I think when you're thinking of youth teams, there are two main areas where you've got to think about. You've got to think about the idea of playing in big games, maybe winning low youth league titles and using that as experience to build on, and then you've got the idea of them producing young players for the first team, and I think they've hit a home run on both of those this season. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. It was mad that won it as well. That was like half the team that Liverpool knocked out the FA Cup.
Getting their revenge.
No, it is always good that Liverpool's youth players are doing bits. And hopefully some of them do make the journey all the way to the first team. A lot of them won't though. I think we've got to always say that. And I think sometimes, you've got to recognise the fact that loads of academy sides are essentially 2 or 3 lads that they think will make it, and the rest they know won't. But you need someone to kick the ball with them so they can play a team game. And I think there's always a bit of that, even in teams that win the Youth Cup. You look back at Liverpool youth teams that have won it in the past. And some of them didn't even crack on in football. No. So it's very early to be saying any of them will make it. But yeah, unlucky the boys, but well in to get to the final.
Very much so, and they would have enjoyed playing in front of a full crowd at Villa Park, even if the result didn't go their way. We haven't got time even to talk about the fact that Jurgen Klopp's been nominated for Manager of the Month for May. I'm sure he's obviously going to win it because, let's face it, what else has happened? And we'll probably have to end the show now talking about those 2 other matches I mentioned at the beginning. European finals, unfortunately they're both featuring English teams. Yeah, both featuring Manx. I think it's fair to say that we want both the Manx to lose. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's where I'm going with it.
I mean, I feel like supporting Chelsea is of itself some kind of punishment, but
they've won it now, though, haven't they? Like,
exactly.
It was funny when they hadn't won it, but they've already won it, so I'm happy with them winning it again. Well, not happy. I'm happier than City winning one, because you'd never hear the last of it if they won it. They really want to win it. They put all their energy into winning it over years and years and years, so it'd be dead funny if they didn't win it.
It would be absolutely hilarious. So for that reason, we are saying Forza Chelsea. I actually think Villarreal have got a better chance of beating United than most other people think. I want to see if Samuel Chukwueze is in the Villarreal team. He's someone else Liverpool have been linked with. We may be hearing more about him this summer. But Sam is frantically waving behind me, so I think it's time to wrap this up. There's plenty more great action on the Anfield Wrap for you to look out for. Some of it is all happening over there. But Robbo, thank you for joining me.
Any bad.